Are we ready? Are we ready to glow? Hey. All right, let's start glowing here. Oh, look at the auras. My God, they're incredible. It's fantastic. Look, what a pleasure, what an honor, what a privilege to be here. This is a fantastic occasion, probably one of the biggest Meher Baba gatherings of the year in the United States. Not bad. Very, very good. No Chuan. From everywhere, from everywhere. Marvelous, marvelous occasion. Certainly, as somebody who's been involved in such things, many thanks for the people who have made it possible, all the technical people, the planning people, the cooking people. My man Phil here, one of the great sound men of all times. You can't quite hear back there, right? All right. We can do this. And to be sandwiched between two of my favorite musicians, Jamie and Misha. Oh, they're good. They're good. Now, you may find some of my comments random. We're off to a very good start. Thank you, Bill. I'll just hang on to it for now. But there's a theme. There's a theme. No Chuan gave me the theme. I must obey No Chuan. And that is Meher Baba's work in America in the 60s. Now, we're going to see some very, very interesting concordances between what happened with No Chuan in India in the period of a year or two, and we'll also see and speculate on what Meher Baba was up to. Now, first a disclaimer, as I always do, for any defects in memory, I claim age. For defects in interpretation of what Baba is doing, well, you know about that. That's up for grabs too, so nonetheless. I did want to say an interesting story. Stories keep happening, and the theme here is going to be Baba coincidences, quotes, kind of Baba miraculous occurrences in what he was doing then and what he's doing now. Now, you might know, for example, Muhammad Ali passed away this week, and I wonder if everyone knows that he was actually studied Inayat Khan's work very, very deeply and knew about Meher Baba. Yes, he did. Now, you want to know how? Yes, I thought you would. So back in the 60s, when we were really hot missionaries, there are a couple of people who were really enthusiastic. One was a fellow named Peter Potter, who's I think now still in Georgia. He was so gung-ho, he would go to streets on the corners with Baba posters, etc. He loved Muhammad Ali, loved him. He said, Muhammad's got to know about Meher Baba. So he tracked him to his training camp in upstate New York. He snuck in the camp, and he waited at the side, and he waited between training rounds. And finally, he leaped into the ring, and he showed Ali a Baba card. Don't worry, be happy card. And Ali said, who that man? Who's that man? Who is it? And Peter said, who is that? Who's that? And Peter came up with one of the great lines of sports history. He is the only one who loves you more than you can love yourself. It's true. And Ali says, well, where can I see him? And Peter said, well, he's in India. And Ali said, oh, I'll go see him. Well, he never did. But that's the kind of thing. You don't know. Seeds being planted. And we'll find out, both No Chuan stories and some I'm going to tell you, how these little seeds turn out to work. Now, remember the context. 1960s, 1962. We had a wonderful experience hearing Noshuan and Jimmy and Goer talking about their intimate experiences with Baba. Well, things were hot in 1962. East-West gathering. What Baba said, most important meeting he would ever have. Cuban Missile Crisis. We almost wiped out the world. China invades Russia. It's all going on. It's hot. Mayor Baba is in. He's moving into seclusion. He's doing his universal work. Now, the universal work is big-time work. Very big. It's very big. It is so big, we can't understand what it is. But we knew he was busy. He was not answering texts at that time. So part of the context of this, as we'll see, and it involves Noshuan, suddenly the East and the West begin to have a new relationship in terms of Meher Baba and his work. And it doesn't look like they're related in the beginning, but it becomes very obvious. So, 62. There are two phases of Baba's work, perhaps. One is strengthening, and we heard about this today, strengthening his lover's relationship to him. That is internal spiritual development. But the other piece, which we weren't so aware of in the early days, was his impact on the rest of humanity, on, as I will argue, social movements, political infrastructures, and the quality of illusion. Yes. You didn't think there was much quality illusion, did you? And Meher Baba was being sneaky, too. Now, back in the early days, when we were interested in spreading Baba's message, kind of the fantasy everybody was going to give up their old religion, their old rituals, and they come flocking. Millions, tens of millions, probably by next year. Baba was a little sneakier than that. He would sneak in his influence, not only among Baba lovers, which are really the few. We were trying to figure out how many there were in the world. We are not a major religion yet, I can tell you that. We're not even a religion, but we knew that. But he's starting to influence all of the movements inside other religious systems as well. So I thought I would give some examples of Meher Baba's esoteric principles that come out in strange places, that involve not only his cosmic humor, psychology, spirituality, and invasion of religious institutions. These secrets have been found in the archives of church newsletters. Yes, church newsletters. You must listen closely, because the implications are quite remarkable. Baba does this for our benefit, for our enjoyment. For example, now none of these came from announcements of the Golden Jubilee, mind you. Here's an announcement in a church bulletin for a national fasting and prayer conference. Quotes, "The cost for attending the fasting and prayer conference includes meals." This is esoteric. They're announcing the sermons of the day. The sermon this morning, Jesus walks on water. The sermon tonight, searching for Jesus. Where'd he go? I don't know. And he's created these themes of major international significance come out, if you can read them, right? Here was another announcement. The peacemaking meeting scheduled for today at the synagogue has been canceled due to a conflict. And those of you interested in Meir Baba's view on relationships and sometimes the karmic difficulties, you can be comforted by the following announcement of a wedding. Irving Benson and Jessie Carter were married on October 24th in the church. So ends a friendship that began in their school days. Now, Meir Baba did not ignore children, and he had great tolerance and love for children, which can be implied from this bulletin announcement. The 8th graders will be presenting Shakespeare's Hamlet in the church basement Friday at 7 p.m. The congregation is invited to attend this tragedy. And Baba's understanding of psychology was incredible, his understanding of psychology. I was pleased to read this empathetic bulletin. As a psychologist, the low self-esteem support group will meet Thursday at 7 p.m. Please use the back door. Now, physical health is covered too. In another, Weight Watchers will meet at 7 p.m. at the First Presbyterian Church. Please use large double door at the side entrance. Manonash, manonash. And we did search the archives for something that would help Noshuan in fundraising. I'm not sure these last two announcements will work, but we can try. In case you want to make donations to Beloved Archives, please place your donation in the envelope along with the deceased person you want remembered. It's a big envelope. It's very big. And here's a slogan we rejected for the Beloved Archives fundraising campaign. It was announced that the associate minister unveiled the church's new fundraising campaign slogan last Sunday. I upped my pledge, up yours. He's not going to use that. He's not going to. I know he's not going to use that. So we'll get back to this theme of the immersion of old religions and practices of spirituality at a slightly higher level. But, all right, let's reset the context now in terms of at least my memories of what was happening in the 60s. Around the time Noshuan was negotiating with Meir Baba and losing, I was finishing my graduate degree at Harvard with Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, and a member of the LSD experimental group. To make a long story short, we of course soon came to the conclusion that God could be reached and higher consciousness could be reached through psychedelic drugs. Again, to make a long story short, didn't work too well, but we thought it was, you know. Timothy Leary thought it was, and at the same time, there was a national kind of agitation, particularly among young people, seeking. The Vietnam War was going on. It was just about to be fully armed. And the so-called hippie phenomena occurred. So there was a lot of social unrest and a lot of seeking. And so sincerely, even we academicians at that time thought that there needed to be a better way. We thought the psychedelic drugs did it. Well, you will not be surprised, and some of you know the history, that Meir Baba didn't think it was such a good idea. Now, Mind you, I had been very generous. I had, after learning of Meher Baba at Woodstock, New York, where Darwin Shaw, the Winterfelds, Lynn and Phyllis Ott, showed a movie of, guess what, the 62 East-West Darshan. Okay, it's starting to come together here. And I, being very impressed with this man who was very patient, had a good sense of humor, and he seemed to like those people. I mean, really. But so we had been studying a lot of Eastern thought, and I happened to walk over to the book table. I won't do it now, no sure, and stole the book Sparks. Stole it. It's a little, you know, it's a nice pamphlet of Baba sayings. Do you remember? Sparks. Oh, same time as back to you. This is 1964. So, of course, I knew that whoever wrote this was probably the smartest guy in the world. He was summing up everything we had studied in Eastern and Western thought. And mind you, back then there wasn't a lot of literature. So one of our members of our psychedelic community happened to have been gifted the discourses by his stepmother. And I read them. It's terrific. But Meher Baba had to be tested. How do you test them if you're a stupid person like me? You take LSD and read the discourses. Fortunately, I picked a wonderful chapter, The Journey of the Soul to the Oversoul, and modestly got to the sixth plane of consciousness. Took an hour. Wasn't easy. Which was validated as I got off that wonderful hill in August in upstate New York, and a group of itinerant mimes shouted as I walked down the hill, look, he's a god, he's glowing. Glowing, here's another thing. And then 3 days later, when I went back to a job I had near Millbrook, which was our psychedelic community home, in a 5,000 bed hospital for what we called then mentally retarded children, I was walking in the office, and the kids started leaning out of the window and started to applaud. And then suddenly they all rushed to the window, and they're yelling and screaming, applauding for me. I said, well, of course. Sixth plane, hey, they may be retarded, but they're tuned in, right? So I decided to share this with, I didn't know who the Baba community was, but I knew there was a universal message, and it had Kitty Davies' name on it at that point. So I said, look, how can I be selfish, really? I'm going to share this. I wrote Kitty a letter and said, look, you Baba people might like to know how to get to the sixth plane. It's good. Let me tell you, it's good. Here are the pages. Here's the number of micrograms of LSD. And here's basically, make sure you're in a good mood, etc. So, of course, Kitty didn't quite know what to do with that letter. Now, this is going to be in late 1964. And sent it to Adi Irani, Sr., who was doing correspondence at that time. And he really didn't quite know how to respond either. So he interrupted Baba's seclusion. Baba knew how to respond. He really did. And he said, very gentle letter, that you couldn't do it that way. Not only that, you couldn't even get to the shadow of the first astral plane that way. So then became kind of a dialogue. Look, he's the smartest man in the world. If he says he's God, he probably is. I better take this seriously. And it created a split in the movement. So for a couple of years, and now we're kind of moving towards 1966, Other people had communicated with Baba, had visited. Some were carrying LSD or marijuana with them, and Mayor Baba discouraged it. Ultimately, Baba gave a very, very comprehensive analysis of the effect of psychedelic drugs and their including even their possible medical uses. And he nailed it. He nailed it from a scientific point of view. He did, oh boy. 1965, all the research has validated everything that he said. Later, I get to it, there's a couple of books. There's a book here that Laurent Weichberger put together that has a lot of Meher Baba's statements about that. I'm going to show you in a minute a copy of The Glass Pearl, which was an early result of the glow. Neutron's work with the glow. Anyway, 1966 comes, and I'm in Myrtle Beach, about to graduate, and Murshid Adus sees an article in the New York Times about the spread of the use of LSD and a lot of the harm it was doing. Now, before that point, it looked as if most of Baba's messages about psychedelics had to do with telling Baba lovers, don't get confused here. You know, it's not happening. So that was in April. And then, not long after, Baba looked at the letter and he responded. And he said that the real problems here, that Baba, he wrote back to Murshid saying, Baba wishes me to let you and those concerned know that if the student world continues to indulge in the use of LSD, half of the USA would soon become mentally deranged. We were on our way already. And then, but he said that he wishes Robert Dreyfus, Allan, Cohen, Rick Chapman, and others who have stopped taking LSD to be his apostles in this particular field, to give lectures in college campuses, speak in social gatherings, and write articles against the use of these drugs and based on Meher Baba's principles. Well, this was kind of like when Neutron was given the go for the glow, and he said, well, that his skills and capabilities were consistent with this. Well, I and the guys said, our skills and capabilities are not consistent with this. What are we, who's going to believe us? We got no credibility. I hadn't gotten my PhD yet. Rick was away on a fellowship. Robert was kind of half must in those days. So it was you know, the thought. Now I'm new here, so don't take it too badly. I'm saying, he may be God, but does he really understand American culture? You know, we don't have a chance. Anyway, make a long story short, I will very, very briefly tell you something that I wrote to Baba, and this really happened. Wrote to Murshid Adus, she said, you idiot, the master tells you to do something, you just be a hammer in his hand, don't, just do it. I'm thinking, yeah, but how do we get started and all that? And then, as I wrote to Baba, which was, I will tell you that I have the record of asking the avatar the dumbest question. This was not it, but I'll get there. So I'm really upset. And then I remember, I go and I try to get my mind off this by reading a terrible astrological, psychic, occult journal that somehow I had. Got my mind off it. And then I remembered how I got it. And I got it a year before when I went to a psychic conference conference of psychics, just for fun, and knew that I would win the door prize. I won a bottle of champagne with my girlfriend at the time who said, "You're not going to win the door prize." I did. And I think I'm getting a new car. And, but I never really had a psychic hit like that before. I just knew I would win. And instead of giving me the car, he gave me a 2-year subscription to the New Cosmic Star magazine. Now, the fun of that was, I realized, I said, my God, this magazine is so bad, they'll take an article by anybody. And we wrote one. They accepted it. They accepted it. So on April 6th, 1966, I got a note from Adi. I received the copy of the New Cosmic Star. Your wonderful article, LSD and the Spiritual Quest, The Psychedelic Illusion, was read to beloved Baba, who sent you a cable which I reproduce hereunder. Quotes, November 1967 will be turning point for everything. Till then, love me and spread my message of truth. Cable acknowledgement. So I knew it was a setup, and from then on, magical things happened. We wrote a letter to college newspapers. They picked it up. The Christian Science Monitor published an excerpt from one of those newspapers in their major editorial, quoting Avatar Meher Baba. They didn't know what Avatar meant, obviously. I thought it was his first name. Hey, so it started to get on. We wrote letters to the editor, Time magazine published it, and then some guy from Babalo from New Mexico, a little bit later, probably late 66, 67. Now let me just pause for a minute, because now we're talking about a time period where, if you look at the original glows, you will find in November of 1966, Noshuan, now in India, offers an article on the harmfulness of LSD. And in fact, in the next, 10 years, probably 100 pages worth of this message. And in 1971, at least the first impression here, the glass pearl comes out of the Anzar publishing empire. With really good stuff and some amazing photographs about LSD. Now, this is very unusual. If you look at Meher Baba's history, he doesn't usually mess around in politics, social movements, public health efforts, I mean, on the big scale. This was a very unusual intervention. And he thought it so important that he would, in his seclusion, that's the only mail he would take on this issue. And we were supposed to report on it. Noshuan would send him stuff. Could it be that catastrophic for the world? Acid trips. Yeah, on one level. Was it perhaps, at least for America, the parallel to following false masters, saints, old practices? Yes. But there was something else. Now we go back to Noshuan. So the glow is oriented towards spreading Baba's message, right? Well, what we found is that no one, when we were doing our drug talks, no one would refuse to invite us. At one point, this fellow in New Mexico wrote to Adi and said, hey, I could probably get these guys on a radio show. And Baba writes back, says, well, Allan Cohen's in charge of radio and television. I said, what? It's bad enough. You know, I can write a dissertation, write things. talk to people? By that time, I knew it was gone. So a lot of the Baba groups in the United States started calling up their television and radio stations. Nobody would refuse. It was incredible. And we started to get the idea that it wouldn't be a bad thing to sneak Baba's name into all this, you know. Just kind of ease it in. Baba had just approved me writing a book, Mastery of Consciousness, and the publisher put me on a TV tour with the author of The Exorcist. It was good. Terrific guy, terrific guy. His wife loved Listen to Humanity. We flew together. And there were, it was just like, now looking back at it, it was the time that he wanted to collect people, his lovers. He wanted them to know. Not just, two things. He wanted to collect some individual lovers, and he also wanted all of America to hear his name. So, strange and incredible things would happen. I mean, to other people who was doing this too, but very, very quickly, for example, I was to give a talk at the University of Massachusetts for about 10 Baba lovers, and 1,100 people showed up. Quarter of the campus with no publicity, which included, I always brought a film with me, which included people who didn't know why they were there. It was obvious. They really didn't. And at one point I showed a film of Baba, and people started to get irritated, and they said, you got any questions? Yes. Don't you think this whole movement is based on severe sexual repression? No. Then somebody else said, I think that man has Parkinson's. You know? It was going downhill. It was going downhill fast. And then suddenly, I know it sounds wrong, an escapee from a mental institution causes, in an instant, screams to ring out in the audience, and I go blind immediately. Figured I'd finally been shot by the terrorists or something. But I was desperately trying to figure out, which are the senses that go when you die? Are they still there, you know? And fortunately, banana cream was one of them. And so a mental patient come up and snuck up behind me and smashed a pie in my face, dripping down. And the chaos in the room, and the police says, "Oh, leave the guy alone." And but it changed the atmosphere totally, because I simply was dripping with banana cream, finished the question, you know. I said, "Oh, wait till my friends in Berkeley hear about this. They will love this. They will love it." And there was all kinds of articles in the newspaper about how ashamed they were and how well I handled it, etc. Baba would do things like that. There's another Joe Pine show. He was a very negative TV interviewer. He dissected his interviewees on television. It was like the Romans, you know, the audiences. Rick and I went on this show. It was very, very popular, as you might imagine, in the Kali Yuga. And the first guest was like a animal shaman from Africa who got destroyed. So we got on the panel. The first thing that happened, believe it or not, is a white dove comes out of the rafters and lands on the panel right in front of us. It's a good sign. I think the African guy lost the dove. Yeah. Well, in the middle of the show, not to make a long story short, we're about to get in big trouble. Somebody's coming up to deny our position on drugs. The interviewer always says, "Oh, that Babis kept silence for over 40 years. I bet you he can't even talk anymore." No, it was not good. So the guy comes up to challenge us. And he says, well, that may be very well and good, but it may be very well and good, but I think we're going to be very well, faints dead away. Audience goes berserk. Joe Pine, in his wonderful essence, said to the producer, you assholes get that on tape, you know. And then the producer comes running out and says, this will be an object lesson for millions, you know. And we go rushing down to revive the poor guy. And he wakes up with a smile. He didn't know what happened. His wife was there. There's no explanation for it. That kind of thing would happen. Happen all the time. Now, that was big. That was probably 10 million people saw that. And we had a nice discussion about Baba before he said he attacked us, but it was a good start. There was another one in Chicago when late night show taped, kind of like a Today Show local, and with a band. We had Baba lovers in the audience, and the topic was not Baba, but we had them have Baba photos on their chest with trench coats over them. And when the camera pointed out, flashed, you know. Is that good? It was, Noshawan did that a lot in India with the movies, etc. He would flash all the time. Well, so it seemed to work. I mean, I did it. The guy wasn't too tough on me. But I was happy. We had successful flashing, but he followed me and he said, you know, Dr. Cohen, I understand that you had a film you brought. I bring a film, Baba, all the time. We didn't have time to show it. I said, oh, Ralph, that's fine, that's fine. And I walked into the audience, he follows me. We really didn't have time to show it. I know, I understand, absolutely. It was a really great show, enjoyed it. I'm walking out on the street, the guy follows me. He says, really, really, you have to believe me. We didn't have time. He drags me back into the studio. And he goes out to the production, he says, John, tell Dr. Cohen we didn't have any time. We couldn't show the film. Well, we had about a 45-second cushion, but, you know, that's okay. The band filled it in. And this guy, he was hysterical then. He said, get the band back. We got to reshoot it. We got to put the film on for the 45-second gap. John said, Ralph, the band is a union band, and they've really ended for the night, and we don't retape. The show's going on in 2 hours. He refused. He went berserk until they did it. They retaped that 45, took the band out and put Baba film in, and I was trying to think of what kind of segue can I make now? I'm talking over the film a little bit, and it's over, and he says, fine. Then I asked the stage crew, I said, does he like this offer? They were ashen. They said, this can't happen. He's not like that. He went berserk. We don't understand. You just don't do that. That kind of thing would happen. Now, I want to tell you something, another story that I was able to write to Baba. And this goes back to we're getting back actually to a theme here. I know it's hard to believe. That is what Baba was seeding for the West. There was a point in these 2 years between 66 and 68, late 68, where the Americans, now who were like me, pretty clueless, you know, except for our longtime Baba lovers and people like Mersh Deduce, the messages from Baba changed, and they shifted more from informing people about drugs to spreading my message of love and truth. And it became much more obvious that that's what was going on. And we would find often from like each of these shows, sometimes 10, 20 years, 30 years later, somebody would walk up to me and say, oh yeah, I watched that Chicago show about 30 years ago, and that's how I heard about Baba. So he would start grabbing his people. but also spreading his message. He was also seeding, S-E-E-D, his message into the broader culture and into broader religious systems. There was one story I just reread, and I didn't understand the significance of it until more lately. And that had to do with the Catholic Church and how it's very possible that among other systems, Baba is weaving his way into Roman Catholic, if not classic theology, at least spirit. Very unusual. I was in Rochester, New York, visiting my parents, and this is since I wrote about it, was probably 1968. And I was going to LA, I think, and the plane was going to St. Louis. And I got on the plane. I was in a bad mood. I was in a non-spiritual mood. I know none of us have ever done that. You ever gotten a non-spiritual? I know. 10 years ago, I was a grump. And I sat down, and right next to me on the aisle was this bouncy college co-ed taking her first flight who wanted to chat. Now, usually you can handle that, but when she said things like, "What is this?" I said, "It's a seat belt." "What do you do with it?" "Oh, God, yeah, put on." So I'm sitting there, I'm grumping, and she says to me, do you know who's on this flight?" I said, "My luck today, Fidel Castro, I don't know." I said, "Okay, who?" She says, "Archbishop Sheen." Now, due to the youth of this group, you may not recognize the name of Fulton Sheen, who was a very important person, particularly in the 50s and 60s in the Catholic Church. Priest, moved his way up, and he became, I think at one point, Jimmy, what's the name? The guardian of the Confederate Congregation of Faith or something like that. Guy who protects old, the rules, the dogma. But I remembered him because when I was 14 or 15, he had a network TV show. Network TV show. This is not infomercial. Highly rated. He would give talks. He was this great, 6'4", black-haired guy. He would talk about theological stuff in such an entertaining way that even I, as an adolescent, little, almost Jewish kid, my parents said, "What are you watching that for?" "Well, he's good. He's good." So he gets to be Archbishop of Rochester, and he gets in trouble. He starts giving away church property to the poor. This is beginning. It's a little shaky. So I'm thinking, I'm now remembering my adolescence, and saying, I'll bet he knows the secrets of the church. I wonder if he knows what Baba knows. Not what Baba knows, but what Baba teaches. And then I said, well, maybe I should go try to talk to him. But the ego part of me said, "You stupid fool. You're not going to go talk to Archbishop Sheen. What, about theology? Really? Nice, good. This is not only embarrassing, but it's disrespectful." Yeah. I said, but on the other hand, he's a good guy. He should know about Baba. There's no way. You're good. Really, this is foolish. This is very foolish. So finally the other guy said, "Okay, I know what I'll do. I had a copy of God in the Pill with me." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to just go up to him and give him the pamphlet and split." At least they'll see that. And so then I tried to find him. I couldn't find him. I said to the girl, "Where is he? Is he in first class?" "No, he's in economy." And it turns out that the 6'4" guy is 5'3". He's got gray hair. And he's reading a book on violence and nonviolence. And so I did it quick. I said, "I'm a psychologist. I work with kids. There's a problem of drugs here. You might be interested in this." And then he said, "Sit down." Sit down. Sit down. Turned out to be a very sweet man. We got talking about youth and spirituality and stuff like that. And at one point he looked at me and says, I have 600 priests working for me. How do you think we should revive spirituality? You're asking me? You're asking me? Cohen here? Give me a break. So I'm going, well, this is a chance. This is a chance. Let's see. So I said something about priests being more interested in spirituality, etc. And then I said, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. I said, I think, Archbishop, it's time to bring back reincarnation. I said, well, heaven and hell is done okay from one point of view, but they're really ready for it. I went through the just God thing, etc. Now, I knew he was not going to tell me his feelings about it, but I was eye to eye with him. After I finished, he smiled at me. He said, maybe I'll do a TV show on mysticism. Then I said, okay. I had the discourses with me. I said, oh, you might enjoy this too. He opens it up to the chapter on violence and nonviolence. And he looked at me and says, oh my. Later, it turned out Phyllis Frederick, who'd been a fan of his, sent him a photo of Baba looking most Christ-like. Didn't identify him, said, I thought you might enjoy this. And he got a reply back saying, thank you very much for the photograph of our dear Lord. I said, well, that's an ordinary... Wait a minute, there were no cameras back then. What's going on? So, this is long ago. The story ends, Bishop Sheen has qualified to be a saint in the church. They're fighting over his remains, but he's got his miracles in and all of that. So I wrote that to Baba, and Baba seemed to enjoy that. So he was, in other words, it was clear that Baba was infusing almost everything, oriented towards the new humanity. And what was occurring, he used, is my interpretation, our psychedelic drug work, not only to be very helpful to humans who were really getting harmed, but as a wedge to get access in the United States, primarily to mixed media, to not only to college campuses, which loved the talks, but to get them on TV, and we figure it's probably 20 or 30 million people at least from the shows that all of us did. Got to either see him, a photo of him, or hear his name. So as Noah Sharon, who's now, he's on the LSD bandwagon, later he sets up some interviews in India for me, right? With the Times of India and All India Radio. Some funny stories about that. But it was, in fact, a very magical time. And I think the glow represented, it was born in the East, but now it comes from the West. It's international, it's universal. It's the big glow. And a lot of the folks in this room, if you trace your Mayor Baba lineage back, there's a good chance that something happened in the 60s to somebody, your grandparents. No. We do have a labor shortage of young people, so please recruit in that area if you can. But really an amazing platform for what might be the new humanity. And I would basically end with the observation that my fascination with Mayor Baba's dedication in God Speaks to the illusion that sustains reality. Now, why would he do that? Because he's dreaming it, wants to improve the dream. Okay? So the dream is real, even though it's illusory. And if you look really closely at kind of what Baba said, how to do it, he talked mostly about love and service. Even in the chapter 10 of God Speaks, he says that he saw his explanations in intending to appease the intellectual convulsions of the mind of man and reaffirmed the relative importance of what aspirants do in the game of creation, not what they believe. And I would end with this, and his message really of love transcends everything. If you look at how he said how to love God, it almost always involves other people. People in the illusion. Interesting. The connection with him allows us to operate in the illusion to improve his dream. So he ended up saying this: God cannot be explained, he cannot be argued about, he cannot be theorized, nor can he be discussed and understood. God can only be lived. And so we end hoping that Meher Baba gives us the opportunity to enjoy the glow of his manifestation in the new humanity, now and in the foreseeable future. Jai Baba.